The Guns on Pegs podcast is brought to you by ITAP Group. Hello and welcome to the Guns on Pegs podcast. It's George Brown in a very sunny but slightly chilly Hampshire.
It's Avian in a likewise wonderfully sunny but little drafty Cornwall.
It's Jake in Suffolk, and I can see a lot of blue sky.
It's Sam in sunny Devon. Also a little bit windy. Not me.
How are we, gents? What's new?
Nothing.
Sam, what have you been doing, Sam?
We've been lambing, which may sound really strenuous, and you've got pictures of sheds full of sheep and long hours, but we've just got a few Hebrideans, so it's not that strenuous at all, and they're happily doing it outside this year, which is wonderful compared to last year.
No long nights in the lambing shed then?
No long nights in the lambing shed. Everyone's done so unassisted so far, although I did have one taken by, I believe, the fox, so there have been a couple of nights I've sat out with a lamp just having a look about, but nothing seen.
How are the foxes up your way? We were out the other evening here with the thermal, and they are everywhere. We hopped out of the car, and there was one in the field to the left of us, one in the field to the right, and one in front of us. I don't know where they're all coming from.
No, I haven't seen too many about. I thought I was on top of them fairly well, but clearly not as much as I thought. So yeah, we'll keep an eye out, but there's obviously one or two poking about still.
And how about you, Jake? What's new at your end?
Just ticking along. It's April, and it's very, very enjoyable on the farm. There's lots of foals now, we're getting through it. But I've actually managed to find a little bit of time to do a bit of photography and filming. Believe it or not, like George and you, when you visited Branches Park and looked across the way there to Farmhouse and said, good luck having that ready for March for the wedding. Well, bloody Peter and Gemma only got it done, didn't they? And they're on their second wedding already now. So we were in there over the weekend doing a bit of content for there. So that was lovely. But chaps, I've also had to do a bit of deer management. And unfortunately, I was going to work the other morning about 6:30 and saw a munkjack had been hit only just recently on the side of the road. Guys, what is the kind of the SP when it comes to dealing with? I had to put it down. I sorted that pretty quickly. Luckily enough, a gamekeeper in the form of Max pulled around the corner going to work, and I was like, "Can we deal with this?" He's like, "We can sort this." It was only a small munkjack, but it was, guys, just what happens when you hit a deer? Should I have reported it? It's a regular occurrence. You got any suggestions for people listening?
I think you're meant to report it, and the police send out their specialist dispatch unit or person. But I think it can all be quite long-winded. And if you're in a position where you know what to do, or if you know someone who knows what to do locally, then you just get in touch with them and sort it out for welfare grounds more than anything else.
I'll tell you what, it's an interesting one. I had an incident with a good friend of the pod, Ollie Williams, a while back. I was coming back from a bit of foxing. I know it's name dropping, but it's not in my favour, unfortunately. So I was coming down, and there was a car parked in the middle of the road, lights on, hazards on, and he flagged me down. I got out of the car, recognised this chap, and thought I must have clay shot with him at some point. Hello, mate, how you doing? And unfortunately, there was this red hind in the road. Somebody had clipped the back end of it, and it was in a hell of a lot of distress. And he was on the phone to the police, and he said to me, have you got, obviously I was in my foxing gear, so he said, have you got a knife or a gun or something in the car? And I said, well, I've got the 243, I've got DSC, but I don't have the dispatch ticket. And he said that to the police, and they went absolutely off the chart straight away. Absolutely no use of firearms, do not get involved, do nothing until we get there.
Really?
And bless him, he said, well, the police are on their way, they're going to be here whenever they get here. So rather than get involved with you having a firearm in the car and the police here, I'll deal with this, get on your way. And it was only then when I got in the car and I went, what a nice chap, I wonder where I knew him from. And it was like, oh shit, I know him off the telly, don't I? It's Ollie Williams. But anyway, so I mean, seriously, it's something that I'm meaning to pick up with BASC and with the BDS to actually find out what is the current guidance, because it always used to be that if you are competent, you have the tools, you deal with it and you report it afterwards. but that really doesn't seem to be the way it's done anymore. And I think, as Sam said, it does seem to be now that it's report it to the police, don't get involved, and they will do their thing. But, there we were, all the tools and all of the knowledge to dispatch this poor animal rapidly. And we just had to do nothing and wait for the police to make their way over.
Had the police not been on the phone, though, would it be the case, rightly or wrongly, that between yourselves and the knowledge you've both got, you would have just,
We
sorted
probably
the
would
job
have done,
out?
but the problem then is,
it wouldn't have been an
where
issue.
does that leave us if somebody had, last thing you want is you're in a dark village lane and you whip the rifle out of the back of the truck and somebody sees you going the other way and phones it in, and the next thing you know, you've got armed response and the helicopter and Christ knows what else. So I think maybe it is something I will take it upon myself to get into it and find out what the current advice is and what we're meant to do, and perhaps we'll come back to it, Jake.
Nice.
Yeah, I think, the thing's always to err on the side of caution. I'm
Yeah.
guessing you didn't shoot this muntjac, Jake. So,
No.
I think that's probably quite sensible.
Yeah, no firearms were needed for this one. It was in a pretty bad way.
Yeah.
But it was also, can I just take it that if you do see some people in the side of the road, my hazards were on, the other person that was in attendance, his hazards were on. Guys, just slow down.
Yes.
It's 6:30 in the morning. I'm stood on the side of the road and there are cars whipping past me on this country road. And I'm like, really? You can see what I'm doing. Just slow down. So have a bit of consideration. You are in the country.
Absolutely. And don't slow down, open the window and say, can't park there, mate. Not helpful.
Good one. Very good. Lovely job. Lovely. So, Ave, what have you been up to, buddy?
Well, I was just telling everyone my woes. I've been feeding the wildlife down at the farm. I've got this horrible bite on my arm, which George has rather alarmingly told me is probably a spider bite.
Hold it up to the camera. Let's have a look.
Yeah, there you go. There's a great bit of podcasting, isn't it? Have a look at my arm.
There we go. It's
Quite a bite.
visual from the last podcast. But hey, hang on a minute. Hang on. You're worried about that, and it looks pretty swollen. But what about the poor spider?
Yeah, okay. so now we've got drunk spiders in North Cornwall. Thank you.
Drunk spiders with a nicotine addiction.
So you reckon it's going to be the reverse Spider-Man, do you? This spider's going to wake up in the woods with a headache
And a massive beard.
and start wandering around pubs, getting drunk and shouting at people.
It'd be completely normal for Cornwall, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I don't think the outfit would be snug, but for all the wrong reasons.
Brilliant.
I suppose I walked into that. Thank you, lads.
Pleasure.
I went down to the BASC Southwest Gamekeepers Conference at Grateful for the States. Well, that end of March. It was really good turnout. I think there were 70 or 80 delegates there, and all the BASC boys were out, and Charlie Jacoby was there, the media tart that he is, with his camera in hand. And there were some really, really good talks. There was one in particular I just wanted to share with you all quickly, if I could, because obviously, a lot of shoots and a lot of DIY shoots now are looking at bringing their birds in, making preparations. It's a few months away yet, but by crikey, it'll be on us before we're ready. There was a guy there, Dr. Joe Madden, who I think's at Exeter University, and he's done a hell of a lot of work with BASC, GWCT, various wildlife charities as well, looking at all sorts of different bits and bobs to do with game bird release, other things. So the one that he put to us all there, which I thought was absolutely fascinating, was a little chart, which perhaps we can make available in the show notes at some point. But it was just looking at the difference between reared chicks and wild-born chicks. And he was saying in the sort of up to about 8 weeks, obviously the reared chicks have a very, very high survival rate because they're in a controlled environment. They're all wonderfully looked after.
Lots of food.
Controlled food, controlled water, temperature, everything. So they all do lovely. And the wild chicks, obviously, their numbers drop dramatically. They can lose up to 60, nearly 70% of the hatch numbers. But then for the next 10 to 13 weeks, which is basically when we've all got them in release pens, the wild population at that point tend to stabilise. Whereas the release birds that we put in would drop dramatically, drop 50, 60% in numbers. So, illness, predation, some of them just give up the ghost. And he's done a lot of work looking at how do you bridge that gap. And it appealed to me because I thought, well, obviously if we can have a high survival rate when they're young and then replicate that high survival rate when they're under our control in the pens, we're either going to have bigger returns because we've got more birds surviving through to shooting season, or we have the option to potentially stock fewer birds to get the same results, which will have obviously a decreased impact on the environment they're put into. So what he's been working on is to say with the rearers, they found that if they mix the food up and put some natural food in, a bit of mealworms, so it's not just all pellets, but other things like it's almost like they make a physical and mental gym for the chicks. So they're not just in a barren pen. He's putting in simple things like little perches and stands and a bit of vegetation and other bits and bobs. So his work is starting to show that just that mental and physical preparation means you get much more streetwise birds when they go into the release pens. So obviously we buy a dozen and a half, so we don't have much sway with the breeders from our point of view. But I think if everyone out there taking poults takes a bit of time and just says to the rearers, guys, are you aware of this? Are you doing any of this? Is it a way that we can get better prepared poults arriving in the release pens?
Yeah.
And I've been emailing him and saying, well, is there anything we can do at the point of release? And he said, well, obviously it's better if they get it when they're very, very young. But if you can do these sort of things in the release pen as well, you may find that they're maturing quicker, they're a bit more observant to predation, bit more resilient to the stresses of being in the pen, and just like we said, bit more streetwise. They get their flick knives a bit earlier, and hopefully then we've got a few more ready on the ground when we start harvesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, the streetwise, they're just those wild reared chicks are just that much savvier, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I guess the ones that do make it are the most robust, and maybe there's a bit of the artificially raised ones are maybe not quite as strong, so they potentially they're not the strongest genetically or whatever it may be, that they've not quite got the that robustness about them. Of course, the simple answer, Ave, is that you start rearing under broody bantams.
Absolutely. I've got nothing else to do in my life than go down and check every half an hour 58,000 bantam boxes. I mean, you said about strength. The bit he picked out particularly bizarrely was foot strength. And he said with the younger chicks, if they're learning to perch up and roost up, they tend to get stronger foot muscles and longer toes, and they're much better prepared later on. So
do you have a risk with a bird that's maturing earlier and is a bit streetwise that it might up and bugger off quicker?
Again, that's perhaps down to how you manage them in the environment. If you've got an interesting environment, if your density isn't too high, once they leave the pen, we all suffer that, don't we? Where are they going to go? And I think that's just down to broader habitat management. But he listed off a lot of the things we'd tried. He didn't put Ribena in the water, but, we'll do that again anyway. But he's done, as we did, hanging up cabbages, and he said carrots are cheaper and work just as well, providing lots of low roosting. And the other thing he was saying was what they did a lot on some of the shoots he's worked with is pollard trees or coppice trees to about 1 metre. And instead of taking the brash off, just bend it over. So you're like making little arches and tunnels. And he was saying very quickly, you see the birds are starting to look up a bit more. We all know that the sooner that they'll roost up off the ground, the less open to predation they are.
Yeah.
It's got to be worth a try. It's small cost, potentially high gain stuff that will hopefully see our returns better.
Yeah, I wonder how instinctive the response to aerial predators is. If you got a few, just bung a few paper aeroplanes over the brooder house when they're all kicking about in there, just to get them used to looking for things over the top.
You could be onto something, George. I mean, I wondered about, those hawk flags.
Yeah.
We thought, do we get some of those to try and keep the buzzards deterred? But I worried that, it might actually just terrify the hell out of the poults and they bugger off somewhere else. But I think we've all seen it as they're starting to move out of the pen. The first few weeks in the pen, they're just blindly bumping into each other like London commuters. Whereas after a couple of them have been thinned out and the owls have had a go and the buzzards have had a go, you start watching a few of them sort of a bit more looking up and aware of what's going on.
Hmm.
So maybe we
Yeah.
can turn feed sacks into paper aeroplanes and finally find a use for them that's not just beaters flags.
Yeah, but you don't want to desensitize them either, do you? I was
No.
thinking maybe getting those owl statues, the plastic owls. With
Our
wobbly
buzzards
heads.
sit on those.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And then, but then you'll just desensitize, and they'll be like, "Oh, look, it's that plastic owl."
That hasn't moved for weeks.
It ain't Percy, lads. And
but no, it's just a really interesting. Yeah, I thought it just caught my eye. Just something, again, something low cost, something practical you can do that might bring results. And then the other bit that caught my eye from the conference was they were talking about the dreaded revocation of licenses, and just very, very briefly, because I think we've gone across that quite a few times, but it just struck me they pretty much picked out the 3 Ds of things not to do to try and avoid, to avoid the risk of having your certificates revoked. So they were drink driving. They said, for Christ's sake, don't do drink driving. It's an immediate. The police know it's what they're looking for. The other one, which might be a little harder to avoid, is divorce. And don't have disputes, especially with your neighbours. So, I think it's been...
So disputes means punch up, right?
It can do, but it can also mean if you're arguing with your neighbour over the line of the hedge or having a smoky barbecue or whose parking space is it, it only takes your neighbour just turning around and saying, well, of course he threatened he'd get his guns on me, whether that's baseless or not. And it creates an instant response and potentially an immediate revocation. So the 3 Ds.
Very useful info, Avian. Thank you very much. Well, so I've not been having anything like as exciting a time as the rest of you, because I've been doing fairly prosaic office-based stuff.
You job people.
I'm a soft-handed desk worker. But what I have been doing is toughening up some of my skin. I've been getting back to bouldering, which is, for those who don't know, it's sort of low-level climbing. We're climbing mostly indoors up to a height of about 5 meters or so. So you're never really in very much danger, which is good because I'm not very good with heights. But it's something that my wife and I did a lot, sort of 3 or 4 times a week before the kids were born. And then for obvious reasons have done rather less in recent years. But we actually got the kids some climbing lessons, which then we could then go down to the climbing center and climb while they were having their lesson, which has been great.
Nice.
That's brilliant. How are you finding the flexibility? Is it returning or are you?
The main noticeable difference is I'm a bit heavier than I was back then.
I disagree, George. I think as the decades go by, gravity just becomes more fond of you.
Yes, well, either someone's dialed up the gravity knob or I have got bigger. So to begin with, it was quite frustrating because it was a question of looking at things and saying, well, 5 years ago, I'd have been able to do that. No problem. I know exactly what I need to do. And then sort of pulling on and going, turns out I can't even get on it, let alone do a move. But over the last couple of months or so, I've sort of started feeling like I'm getting a little bit of the strength back, and possibly, just possibly, some of the weight is coming off. But my waistline wouldn't necessarily agree there. But it has been really nice just to be getting some exercise in and to be bouldering again, which is really nice. So yeah, not much outdoor stuff, but I have got a bit of fishing lined up for next weekend, which I'm very much looking forward to.
So you're going to be combining the bouldering and the fishing. I just have visions of you with a 6-weight clamped between your teeth as you're crawling to the impossible pool down the side of a cliff face.
Well, you see, the thing about indoor bouldering is it is quite safe. There are nice, big, thick crash pads underneath. And the climbing is designed in such a way. So once you get to the top, there are nice sort of big handholds for you to climb down, that kind of thing. Outdoor climbing isn't something I've tried any of yet. But funnily enough, there is, you might be familiar with the Japanese sort of version of fly fishing, which is tenkara.
Yes.
Which, for those who don't know, you don't have a reel, and it's very similar to fly fishing. You're using artificial flies, The rods are slightly different, the casting slightly different, but the concept is basically, the idea is the same. And the sort of extreme version of that is climbing, quite serious stuff to get to these little mountain rivers, which does look amazing. And there's a chap, I think his name's Paul Gaskell, who's a very, very good fly fisherman and also a very good climber, and he does a bit of this sort of thing as well. So that's well worth.
So you're going to become very much the Zen fly fisher then, George?
I'm always very Zen, as you know.
That body's a temple of yours, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just waiting for the low-calorie beer he's going to be drinking in a minute.
We've been on this for a little while now, and we haven't mentioned what the bloody hell we were all drinking. So I think it's a perfect time to have a bit of a stop and chat. What's that you're drinking, George? I can see a very nice glass. So what's that you're drinking, George?
Well, Jake, it's always rosé weather, but especially when the sun comes out. So I've got a very nice glass of Provençal rosé. Oh, I had memorized the name, but now I've forgotten it. But anyway, it's pink. It's sort of pale pink, and it's wine, and it's delicious and lovely, and just a ticket for this very nice weather we've been having.
Fantastic. In training for that fishing next weekend. So
Exactly. Yes.
Ave, what are you on, buddy?
Well, again, I thought with the sun out, I thought I'd go tropical. And I've dug out from the cupboard when we're up in Orkney, the J. Gow rum distillery up there, run by an old mucker of mine, Colin. And I managed to get 2 of his limited run 5-year-old, the Halls of Clestrain bottles, which is a 5-year-old rum he made double cask matured in virgin chestnut cask. It's kind of a really tropical fruity rum flavour, but it's almost got that sort of whiskey edge from the barrels. I only managed to get 2 bottles out of 229. There are none left in the world, so I've still got half a bottle here. So I thought the sun's out, rum's out, thought I'd treat myself. And then I'm only going to have a small one because it is 54%. And I've got a supermarket lager if we yak on longer after that.
So you're drinking neat rum, no mixer, no cocktailing.
No buggering around, no Coca-Cola, no chunks of pineapple in it. It's as the Lord intended.
Such a Cornish pirate,
absolutely.
Honestly, well done.
I'm feeling more and more sorry for that spider.
I think we've got a work day on Saturday, so I might have a rather large tot of the rum and go back for a rematch with the bugger.
Very good. And Sam, what about you? What are you drinking?
I've got 2 drinks today, and they are both loosely based around the last episode with Leon. The first one, when you and Leon started talking about Chambord, it immediately took me back to 2010, I suppose. And me and a good friend of mine used to go out in Exmouth quite a lot and end up drinking jam donut shots, which is Chambord with double cream and a load of sugar around the edge of the glass, which tastes exactly like a jam donut. Shots on a Thursday afternoon.
Now, fair play. I can see you're taking a good swig of that now. Okay, so as Sam's just done that, but it's got sugar around the rim. You've licked your lips. I wondered if you could drink the whole drink without licking your lips like a jam donut.
No. You can't eat a whole jam donut without licking your lips, can you?
Oh, can you? That's a great challenge.
And once I finish that, I've got a Buckham Brewery, Adam Henson's Rare Breed Pale Ale. And obviously Adam Henson hosted the Eat Game Awards. So both very fitting with the last episode.
Very on point.
Very good. You're getting
what
good.
What have you got, Jake?
So what I have got is a peach and mango daiquiri, and I've slung in a can of Yorkshire tonic, just to give it a bit of that summer vibe and everything like that. So,
God, the game fair can't come around soon enough, Jake, can it?
No, it can't. But what worries me is I'm going to have a sniff of something, and a drink of, and then the next minute I'm going to be like, "Hooray!" running around the place, and so we're going to have to be a bit careful at the game.
We'll stick a wheelbarrow in the back of the car for you. You'll be fine.
Well, I am making a trip to London at the end of April to a certain Mr. Dogs on Pegs for the weekend, London Marathon weekend. So I can't see me getting away.
You're not going to get away with that one, no. You might have to have a day off.
So it's not going to happen. So, but apart from that, very refreshing, and it's just perfect. And not too shabby at all.
Good. Well, I mean, so talking of celebrations, in which I suppose the game fair is, we have got some celebrations to talk about, haven't we? What, Jake, do you want to just talk us through what's been going on?
Absolutely. So, to our knowledge, we've had the first Order of the Garters wedding. Congratulations to Will and Cotton. They tied the knot a couple of weekends ago, and there were garters aplenty. They first swung onto the scene really at the second shoot Order of the Garters shoot day at Brimsfield Park, and so Ben hosted the day. It was a lovely day down there, and Will and his then girlfriend Cotton were on peg, and as we all know how the day works, 20 guns, 10 pegs. You share a peg, you move up, you move down, blah blah blah. We all know that. Anyway, they were joined by Bobby and his newly girlfriend at the time, Lauren, and their first peg had a great drive. Both now got engaged recently. Obviously, Will Cotton, congratulations again. You just tied the knot. Bobby and Lauren were at their wedding. Garters on head, as it should be in true style. We're going to come on and talk about that at any after party social season, and then from that, they have just shared a great friendship from that meeting back in October a couple of years ago, and now they're at each other's wedding. And I think, hats off. What a community this is now. We're sharing weddings, parties. There was a 60th birthday the other day so we won't mention his name, but, he enjoyed that. And, all these Garter members getting together. Guys, it's a pretty cool community,
It's
isn't
pretty good, mate, isn't it? I think we just need
Yeah.
a buy and sell section, and we've got the full deck of cards, haven't we?
Well, so it does leave on to a bit of correspondence that we've had, chaps, which is at this particular wedding. We have had a bit of correspondence, and it reads, "Hello, team. I recently attended my best friend's wedding. He's a fellow member of the most noble order of the Garter, and to my surprise, another honourable member was also at the wedding. He, however, was sporting his Garter in the traditional manner, on his head. Meanwhile, I hadn't even brought mine. Have I committed a grave breach of protocol, or is it just the shooting world's version of a secret handshake? Should we have official rules on when and where to don the Garter? Should we always have them on our person? ? All the best." And from the person that sent it in. So that leaves to the question, chaps, how are we going to do it? I have some strong views on this. As I believe, certainly meeting other fellow the Garters at the first game fair, I think it was, George, wasn't it? When after COVID, wasn't it? That big party?
It was, yeah. It did not take long for, I think they started off, if memory serves, around the neck, worn as a sort of cravat, but migrated north quite swiftly to bandana status. I hadn't properly read this. Should we have official rules? And should we always have them on our person? I think having them on your person at all times is quite difficult, though I have mentioned in the past that a guy I used to play cricket with used to have in the back of his car at all times his cricket bag, a pair of pajamas, and a dinner jacket, just in case, which is quite
That's
good.
all bases covered there, isn't it?
But so maybe they should just be in your car all the time.
Glove box.
Well, we were pondering this the other day, and we did wonder whether, if you take the military point where you have your medals that are worn in full for specific events, functions, and at certain times, and for the rest of the time you have just the little ribbon.
Yeah.
So maybe what we need to do is to have the full Garter for full Garter days, which I guess would be, prescribed social events, shoot days, and what have you. But for day-to-day lapel wear, you just have your small, gloriously gaudy heather pink little ribbon that you can wear on all outfits.
Oh, very good. Right. But then, do you have your campaigns as well? So if you were at Stockton, then you have a certain kind of...
Yeah, your Order of the Garter, the shoot day with bar.
Yeah. But what I definitely think is at a social event, it's definitely round the neck, under the collar, and never tied, always loose. And then when it gets into a bit more free and enjoyable, onto the head, tied,
yes, I think
Rambo style.
I think it's Rambo style on the dance floor, isn't it?
Definitely Rambo style on the dance floor, George. I love that. And then, but do you have to wait? It's a bit like, can you go to the toilet until after speeches, or can you take your jacket off? When do we kind of see? But guys, to everyone listening, Most Noble Order Garters members, or anyone who wants to become a member of the Most Noble Order Garters, please send us in at pod@gunsonpegs your suggestions on how we should elevate our way of understanding it. Do we have a secret handshake yet? No, I don't.
Well, I'm not sure about that. That all sounds a bit
Let's hear
extreme.
some suggestions. It'd
No
be great.
funny handshakes, please.
No funny
I mean,
handshakes
the
needed.
big risk, Jake, obviously, is, as we know, it from Dispatch HQ, it can take some time for the garters to be woven under the full moon and distributed. So, if on a social event you got, dare we say, a little carried away and lost your garters, the chances of getting a replacement pair, I think, are slim to none. So, there's something that needs to be taken care of.
Execution at dawn if you lose a garter. Terribly poor form.
Yeah, I couldn't
A formal
more.
defrocking.
Yes, as discussed in the previous episode.
Absolutely.
Somebody could be out with fraudulent garters if you've lost them.
Ooh,
now that would be very bad.
Stolen valor garters. Yes, that's.
Oh, could you imagine?
Maybe the secret handshake is that if somebody identifies you as a garter wearer, you have to be able to immediately remember your George given name.
The trouble is that you could just make something pretty much anything up, and most people.
We've got them all on the spreadsheet, though, George.
I know, but who's going to consult your spreadsheet in the heat of the moment?
We've got to have a hotline.
Yes. The garter snitch line.
Anyway, Mungo here.
Yeah.
And
have a lot calling in.
Very good. Well, I think that's it's so cool that we've had our first Noble Order of the Garter wedding and another one in the offing. It might be that we don't know of another one that might have occurred, without our knowledge. So if there's more of these, do let us know. pod@gunsonpegs.com. Maybe it was your garters that did the trick.
Absolutely.
Ooh.
Well, I think from all of us, congratulations to Cotton and Will.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That also ties in, wasn't there that April Fool's there, George, with the strapline? Didn't you guys come up with?
Oh, well, I can't take credit for the strapline, but yes, several years ago, we had a Guns on Pegs April Fool that Guns on Pegs were going to launch a dating service, Tinder for game shots, basically. Yes, the strapline that actually one of the web developers who's no longer with Guns on Pegs, he came up with, where the Guns on Pegs strapline is plan the best days of your life. The strapline for Guns on Beds was plan the best lays of your life. And it was, we were fielding phone calls for weeks afterwards of people who hadn't realized that it was a joke. We had so many people saying that we should actually launch it as a service. That was speaking of April Fools, though, did anybody get got by this year's AI-driven shooting aid?
It nearly caught me in, because I do like a gadget, and I saw it and I thought, nah, that's just too good to be true.
You just saw someone that said, I miss, and thought you were in.
Hang on a minute, lads. I spent 499 quid. I'm waiting for a email and everything. I was hoping that I'd be able to go out and look for it, and go and look for the saber-toothed Labrador-sized cat that was running around.
Yes.
George, you wouldn't tell us up the river, would you, George?
Do you know what? I absolutely love doing them. They're so much fun. And the thing I enjoy most of all is coming up with the names. I just think I have so much fun doing it, and it's the kind of article where the idea will emerge over the course of a couple of weeks or whatever, and you'll sort of refine it, and then to actually write it takes almost no time at all, because it's all just sort of there at the front of your brain waiting to come out. I have so much fun with it, and the absolute joy is when you get someone. I think maybe the saber-toothed cat was probably a stretch too far from the beginning, but I think we definitely had a couple of emails into the Guns on Pegs inbox from people who'd fallen for it.
Brilliant.
for the AI shooting aid, and they were gratifyingly harumphing about it too. So.
Very good. Well done, team. That's excellent work.
Right, Jake, there was something that you read something on Scribehound recently that you wanted us to talk about.
Absolutely. So it was Marcus Jensen's recent Scribehound, A Countryman's Journey from Hunting to Family Safari Adventures that Marcus wrote. It published on the 29th of March. Guys, it's just an absolutely brilliant article. And it resounded really well with me. I get a lot of enjoyment out of listening to the Scribehounds. It's also a really good way of kind of learning and understanding the authors as well, because a lot of them do read it themselves. And
All of them,
all
Jake.
of them now, is it?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I do apologise, because there was a time, George, was where it was a bit of AI or something for a while, or
Yeah,
something?
we pinned off the AI now, and as you say, when you have the authors reading it themselves, you get to understand how they intended it to be read.
Yes.
You get to hear the passion in their voice, or and you get a much more immediate connection and feel for the piece of content. Speaking of which, since we have the audio available, I thought I'd just play a quick clip of the article that Jake is talking about. Anybody who's a regular listener to the Guns on Pegs podcast will recognize Marcus's voice and his dulcet South African tones. So here is a short clip from that article that I think probably encapsulates the sort of main thrust of the point that he was making in it as well.
But eventually, something else happens. You realize that the enjoyment you derive no longer comes from the challenge, or indeed from being successful, or even from the activity of hunting or fishing itself, but from the experience of simply being in nature, doing what you love. The fulfillment comes from the birdsong, from the sunrises and sunsets, the crackle of the campfire and the whisper of the wind in the branches overhead, from the gurgle and purl of the stream, the sparkle of a spinafore at last light, the warmth of the Labrador against your side in a duck hide, the view from the top of the hill, or the way the light filters through a canopy of acacia, or beech and birch. The setting of the hook or the pulling of the trigger becomes secondary to all of that, and going home empty-handed no longer feels like failure or disappointment.
So, Jake, what was it about this piece that you particularly wanted to talk about?
So for me, it was when he was talking about his children, and that watching it through their eyes. Now, the whole thing resonated with me because I've also spent time in Africa. I've spent a lot of time at Impila and Umfolozi and Shashlui. And so all of it came in, but I've been really lucky to experience shooting again for the first time through my son Joe. He's 27, but he's come into it late after returning from traveling for 6 years. And while I was getting into shooting, he was away, and so he's come back. So I get to experience his first clay shots, his first game shots, which was this season. But with Toby as well, he's been on our back since 6 months of age, and everything's new, and we've kind of gone through that together, that whole wonderful kind of journey together. And as you know, he is still the youngest member of the most noble order of the Garters, and he wears his pinks very well and fashionable, a lot better than I do. And but then, and also now Florence, and that whole thing where Marcus talks about his children. I remember when I got into shooting, and I'm not sure if you guys will agree with this or not, but the older chaps around me that I'm not really into it now. I just like to watch shooting. So what do you mean watch, guys? Let's get out there. Let's get shooting. Like, we're not here to mess around. We're here to enjoy the day. We're here to harvest some meat. And as I've got older, and I've now with the children and watching it, I can really resonate with that whole enjoyment of watching others shooting. Certainly, as well, picking up my camera, I get a lot of pleasure of being able to watch the smiles and the enjoyment from that, capturing that shot of enjoyment when you walk up to each other after the end of the drive and you say, how good was that? And that facial expression, that smile, and whether or not they're 9 or 59, it's so cool. And guys, do you get that same feeling? We're getting a bit older now. So
Yeah, so I'm slightly dreading the day when my children want to take my gun off me. I absolutely love spending time out shooting or fishing or just actually out on the farm with the kids. They love it as well. But I don't think you necessarily need to have kids or want to be passing anything down, to be able to take pleasure in being part of the day. And of course, one of the things about shooting on a small shoot like ours, or indeed I expect the one that you run, Avian, certainly at Branches, you're not always in the thick of the action. There's a couple of drives at ours where if you're at number one, you can be reasonably confident that you're going to be mostly spectating. And a couple of these, you actually have quite a good vantage point to see the shooting down the rest of the line. And it certainly, probably when I was sort of a teenager, maybe in maybe my early 20s, I'd have been disappointed to have drawn that peg. These days, I really kind of enjoy having that peg, because I know I'll get some shooting later on, but having the opportunity to watch everybody else shoot is a real pleasure.
Yeah, I think what I took from Marcus's article very, very strongly. Just put those images in my head was, unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to experience the whole African landscape and wildlife and what have you. But I think what he encapsulated for me was very much the youngsters' fascination with that first minnow that comes out of the little stream, and as you get older, it's then sort of the results driven. I want to do well at this. I want to get better. I want to be on the hot peg. I want to be the top shot of the day. I want to get involved. And I'm feeling it a bit more now as you get a bit older. It's just that immersion in nature, that, getting pleasure from seeing other people waking up to that realization of what being in nature is all about. And I think it's something that we often overlook in shooting and in fishing, in what we do, is that most people who go into nature, whether they're bird watchers or dog walkers or they're horse riding or going jogging, it's maybe for an hour, and they've often got their headphones in, and they'll see things and wander around and back in the car and off to their lives. Whereas we tend to spend hour upon hour upon hour out in nature, and just being able to immerse yourself in it. I'm sure, George, when you've been fishing, you've had those moments where completely wild animals will sort of absorb you into the landscape, and you'll have that moment where a sparrowhawk comes and sits next to you, or a stoat runs past, or you've become part of that environment, and you see so much more.
Funny enough, I wasn't going to. You've just reminded me of a piece I wrote on Scribehound a little while ago about Isaac Walton, who is buried here in Winchester Cathedral, and I think it was the preface, or it might have been the last line of his famous book on angling, is "Study to be quiet," which is actually a quote from the Bible. I forget which bit now, but the point being, if you want to be a good fisherman, practice being quiet. And then it reminded me of something that my dad always says, which is, you don't have to go and look for nature. If you just sit quietly, nature will come to you.
Yes.
And I think those are two very sensible bits of advice for anybody who is spending time in the countryside. Just go and sit and be quiet. And we often think about sort of going for a walk in the countryside and seeing things. It will astound you how much more you see if you're stationary.
Yes.
All of these birds and animals have fantastic hearing, sight, etc. They will see or hear you coming. Whereas if you just sit quietly, they're much less likely to notice you.
Yeah.
Especially if you position yourself sensibly with regard to the wind and all that kind of thing. So that sort of communing with nature, if I can go back to being Zen, is an experience that very few people have a chance to have. And I think I've done a bit of bird watching, and there is something that is faintly disappointing about sitting in a glorified garden shed and watching birds versus sitting on a rock and doing it.
It's time spent, isn't it? It's one thing I picked out of Marcus's piece on Scriband was, in the beginning he was saying about sitting in a tent. All right, he had his rifle, binoculars and some books, but he didn't have any money or other material possessions or anything like that, and none of it mattered. It's just, I know we're all lucky enough to spend a lot of time outside, but it is that time spent. It's very valuable, I think.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah,
I think the other part was just the joy in seeing generations coming through. And I think, as George said, whether you have children yourself or not, I don't. But we encourage youngsters onto our little shoot and on work days and bits and bobs. And it is just seeing that little glimmer dawning in them of, oh, hang on a minute, this is interesting. And, they get to see how the seasons are changing. And I think that's what we, as the becoming crusty old fuggers of the game, need to inject into it, is to bring these youngsters through.
Speak for yourself.
Try and you'll get there, Sam. You'll get there. But it's trying to inspire that passion in them
I
and
genuinely
nurture it.
believe we are, Ave. I
hope
really
so.
do genuinely believe. I think I've come late to shooting, and I genuinely believe that over the last few years, children have been more and more involved in shoots that I've been on. Whether or not it's because our age group has had children later, whether or not we're at that point where we're more adjourning to having youngsters, and there's not that kind of well, you must leave the children at home type of thing, and the good wife stays in and prepares 11.
There's definitely an element of that, like more hands-on dadding. I think is
massively,
a
massively.
big part of it.
Hugely. And I think as dads, it's our opportunity to spend time with our children enjoying the countryside, whether it's going out for an evening walk and just giving time out of the house away from anything that's got a screen, or if it's on a Saturday where we've been at work all week and it's the opportunity as a family to do a family get together with other people. I see it as so much more. And I will just go back to the shoot day, my day at Branches, which was a December 30th. And Laura was sick with that horrible Norvo that was going around.
Yes.
And I couldn't get anyone to look after Florence. So I strapped her on my chest. I had Joe, I had Toby, I had Florence on my chest. And for the whole day, I hosted, and we looked after and we got on with it. And it doesn't make me a super dad. It just makes me very, very lucky to have really accepting friends who were willing to help. And Florence was able to go around and be passed around at Levins's, and I looked after her during the drives, had her ear defenders on, stood away from the guns. Everyone adapted, and it was bloody awesome. And I see so much more, George, when we came to you, the children and everyone was just really into it. Flippers
can't
being
move for the
passed
buggers around here.
So something in the water then.
I think if anybody wants to hear a longer discussion about dadding in the countryside, I'm going to plug the most recent episode of the Countryside podcast, hosted by three people who have previously been on the Guns on Pegs podcast: Richard Negus, Callum, and Rich Prideaux. Their most recent episode was all about being a countryside dad and the challenges thereof and the joys of it. So go and check that out. But speaking of encouraging people on to shoots, Avian, you've got something quite fun and exciting coming up.
Yeah, something quite interesting. So we had Sam down, our local BASC chap, down to the shoot 3 or 4 weeks ago now. We had him down a couple of years ago to give us some pointers on how we might be able to do things better. And he came back to check our homework, and luckily was quite complimentary. So I did a little short video on my YouTube channel, just a chat in the pub with him afterwards. And it was something that came out that obviously BASC are keen to do, and I think a lot of the NGOs, the shooting organisations are keen to promote. Is everybody says we've got this raft of new MPs with the Labour majority. They're new into Parliament. They've had all this stuff dumped on them, and for many of them, they're representing rural constituencies, and they really don't have much idea of what it is we do and why we do it and how we do it. They get to hear the lobbyist view and the anti's view and the knee-jerk reaction. So I think a lot of them are pushing hard to say, try and get in touch with your MP in a positive way, and encourage them to come and join you. So Sam got back in touch with us and has asked us if we'd go and spend half an hour for an initial chat with local MP for the area our shoot's in. So we're going to go down and spend half an hour with them on May 27th, and really just explain to them what it is we do, show them the environmental benefits we've created. We want to talk about the youngsters we're getting involved, and then hopefully that'll lead to them actually coming down to the shoot physically, and we can take them around and show them that it's not back-to-back murdering pheasants day in, day out. It's actually a year's worth of work for 6 days of harvest, and a complete range of age groups and backgrounds and attitudes and what have you all coming together. And for me, it's really making sure that we show them how much effort in both time and resources and money goes into nurturing these disparate small little patches of the environment, that if all the shoots in the country are doing the same, all link up into this overall patchwork of doing good. So, I think to anyone out there who either has contact with their MP or can talk to their local representatives from GWCT or BASC or NGO or whichever organisation they wish to, and just see if they can start fostering those links, because it goes back to the old show don't tell. And I think the MPs are being barracked from all sides at the moment. So something a little positive they can do is going to be brilliant. And it isn't just simply writing a letter and complaining about something, because whilst that has its place, and it doesn't take many letters on the similar subject for MPs to sit up and take notice, but I think something that encourages them to learn a bit more about what their constituents do, and put it in practical terms of what we're doing and what the benefits are, and just bringing it to their attention. Now, obviously, we're not going to change all minds, but if they've seen it in action, then hopefully they won't just revert to what they've been told.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you for taking them up on that offer. And I think, I don't know if you'll be allowed to speak about it afterwards or not, but if you can, we'd definitely like an update on how that goes.
Definitely.
And the sort of reaction from the local MP. I think that'd be really interesting. There is a pretty straightforward way of contacting your MP as well, I think, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, if you go on to members.parliament.uk/find your MP, that'll tell you who your MP is. Now, obviously, if you are a constituent, you can write directly to them. If there's another minister or somebody else in government you want to talk to, your best bet is to write to your MP first and ask them to forward it on. It's the procedure of how things work. And I think that's a good route if you've got a specific issue you'd like to raise, or something that you want directly to receive an answer on. But I really think if you've got an urge to sort of showcase things you're doing, which is what Sam's asked us to do, I think it's a really good idea to just first of all get in touch with your local organisation and just say, look, guys, we'd like to talk about this. What are you doing? Can you help us with this? Can you put us in touch with the right people? And I think you've got a much better chance if you've got a lobby group like BASC going forwards to the MP and saying, look, our members, your constituents, would like you to come and see this, and they can set it all up and manage it for you, and obviously give you a bit of guidance in terms of how to put your ideas across, how to be doing it in a positive light and doing it obviously correctly, so you're not putting yourself in any danger of misspeaking or causing a bit of a ruckus, and if nothing else, just marshalling the day and making sure you get the opportunity to talk to them. But I think for everybody out there, to all the listeners, if it's something you're interested in, by all means, if you want to, drop me a line, pod@gunsonpegs.com, and we can give you some links and bits and bobs to get that going. Or just get in touch with your local rep.
Is there any mileage in obviously you inviting them down to your shoot, Avian, is going to be a good thing because of the range of things you're doing for the environment, on top of the social bits and everything that goes with a syndicate shoot like that. But is there any mileage in inviting them to a playground?
Absolutely, because
education on firearms, a rifle range, out fishing, pigeon shooting, anything like that? Do you reckon there's mileage in doing that?
100%. I think, if I was to ask the MP to come down and watch me knock over a few rabbits in the farmer's field because they're causing a problem with his cattle, I might get a bit too busy, can't do that. But I certainly think, if you're running a playground or you've got a shooting club or a rifle range, the shooting of the clays is a small part of what you really do. The bigger thing is the community and the competition
and I'm thinking, gun safety. You might have MPs that think guns are horrible things, whereas you take them to a clay shooting club, they're going to see quite the opposite, aren't they? That it's a safe
100%.
hobby.
I think that. I mean, that's really what underlines it for me. Is if you show them, they'll learn much quicker than if you try and tell them.
Yeah.
Because if they've got preconceived ideas that we're all swanning around in chauffeur-driven Bentleys and blasting grouse out the window on our way to Waitrose, then that's hard to take out of their heads just by writing them a letter or picking up the phone to them. Whereas if you actually take them to the woods and say, well, look, this is what it used to look like, and this is what it looks like now. Or you take them on the playground and say, you see these youngsters, well, they were doing this, that, and the other until they discovered shooting. And we've got these men and women over here who look after them and discipline them and teach them how to do things in a proper and safe manner. And this is controlled here, and this is what we do. And we've ended up with these competition winners, and this guy's going off to the Olympics or whatever. And it just shows that it isn't knee-jerk guns are terrible. It's actually showing them there's a community and there's far more to it than just that very narrow received wisdom of guns are bad.
Yeah.
Well, great stuff. Boys, we better think about wrapping up. So, as is traditional, any other business we want to cover before we say goodbye?
I think for me, just a very, very quick one, just to remind everybody who's going out in the woods shortly. This is obviously comes back to my gory spider bite, but it is tick season. So do check your bits, boys and girls, when you're out in the woods. I'm going to give this new stuff, Bushware, have done a wash-in tick repellent. So I'm going to give that a try, see if it keeps the buggers off. Look out for your dogs and your pets as well. Nobody wants limes. So, be tick aware, boys and girls.
More sensible advice from Avian. It's sort of Avian's helpful advice episode.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we might have just got our title.
Oh, God, am I becoming the agony twat?
Oh, there goes our explicit. Well done, Avian.
What do you mean becoming?
Got us rated again.
Right, so I think then the very final thing. Sam, can you do the honours with this?
Yeah, so one thing we want to look at introducing is what we've called the Grand Day Out, which is where we go on the Guns on Pegs website and prove the point that not all shooting is hideously expensive. We find things to do for under $1,000 and we point them out and promote them and show that it can be done. So spring is sprung, the Roebuck season has opened. Duffer's Fortnight is just around the corner for the fluff chuckers, and crop protection duties offer opportunities. Many of us are already starting to put dates in the diary for the coming game season, and there's a plethora of experiences to be found on Guns on Pegs to tempt and tease. But we want to take a look at what's available now and see what sort of day you can secure for under $1,000. So, Jake, you've had a look. What have you got?
Yeah, I've had a look, and it's a keeping. It's simulated season, isn't it, chaps? And we are inundated with lots going on. One that keeps cropping up on Guns on Pegs all the time is 6 Mile Bottom Shoot. And guys, they're doing an incredible thing next Saturday, which is a young shots simulated clay day.
Brilliant.
It's brilliant. Richard and Jackie and their team there do a fantastic job throughout the year, and they put a lot into and a lot back into community, but also their events as well. They're very good at hosting, and what they're doing is they're going to do 4 drives and full hospitality, but also for the chaperone parents that brings the young child. Between 10 and 16 is the age, and it's £95.
Wow.
That's a bargain.
That is a bargain.
Good.
And do you know what? It's going to break up Easter as well, because your little darlings are going to be driving you mad by next weekend because it's Easter holidays. And then you've had Good Friday. They're going to be wanting their chocolate. So why not treat them on an Easter treat to a day? There are a few spaces left. I spoke to Jackie this morning. And
that's brilliant. I mean, Jake, 95 quid. I mean, like I said earlier, I don't have kids, but obviously when friends come down with their little ones, a bowl of cheesy chips and a couple of bottles of Coke in the local pub, and you haven't got much change from 95 quid. So, 4 drive, full day hospitality, all decked out, having a hell of a lot of fun. That's good value for money, isn't it?
And
95
it's so
quid.
safe. I mean, the team there are brilliant, and they will make sure that handling. Obviously there's got to be a chaperone. Every young shot needs to have one because they won't have their license. But equally, there'll be so much experience on hand. It's a lovely venue, lovely setting in Cambridgeshire. So check it out, Guns on Pegs, and type in 6 Mile Bottom Shoot. If not, just get on touch with them via their socials. But can I just make a point? When you're looking on these guns on pegs and what have you, all the shoots get an opportunity for you to press the follow button. And if there's a shoot that takes your fancy and you think, oh, do you know what? I quite fancy that, but maybe I need to get a bigger team or, anything, just click the follow button. It actually gives you a prompt, click follow. And what it does is every time an update comes from that shoot, it goes straight into your inbox, and it just keeps you, flowing. It allows the shoot to know that it's being seen. It's a really, really good symbiotic kind of relationship between you and the shoot. Guns on Pegs is a facilitator, and it's bloody awesome.
Sounds great, mate. Definitely.
Sam, what have you found?
I found pigeons.
Yes.
Pigeons in May, which sounds ideal
nice.
Because you can have a 100 bird day for 250 quid with Phil Beasley, who is, I think he's under Hunting UK on the Guns on Peg site. He's got 200,000 acres at his disposal and 20 plus years of experience, which means you'll be in for a good day, unlike when I go out and shoot one or two for the same amount of hours.
Sailing on by.
So yeah, I think that would be a good bit of fun, a good bit of crop protection, and very affordable. He's got lots of good recommendations on Guns on Pegs, like lots of the thumbs up, but nobody's put a review there. So I would say if you have been out with Phil, bang a review on his profile on Guns on Pegs, because that'll help him out.
Very good. Avian, how about you?
So I've gone deer. Obviously, roebuck season has started, and I found on Guns on Pegs Manor Farm down in Suffolk. They've got 4 guns available for 10th of May, and the quarry are stalking for roe, potentially muntjac, and a possibility of Chinese water deer. So you could get your 3 minor species in the bag for the season straight away. They're charging 120 quid a gun. I've been in touch with them. I'm just waiting to hear back from them whether there are any additional fees for trophy animals or what have you. But that's at £120 for the gun. Brilliant. So realistically, you could have 3 days up there, 3 days stalking, 3 different species. That sounds bloody good fun. And I'm sure if you're over that way, you'd probably go and stay with Jake, can't you?
100%.
That would be included, surely.
I know there's wonderful estates.
So that's Manor Farm in Suffolk through Montgomery Sporting. So go and have a look at that one.
Yeah,
fantastic. Well, I better complete the set, hadn't I? We've had clay, we've had feather, we've had fur. So I'm going to say, and you won't find it on Guns on Pegs, just Google your local trout fishery, your local put and take trout fishery.
Yeah.
Get yourself down there for a day, put a bottle of white wine or rosé in the cooler and a couple of sandwiches, and just go and thrash the water for a bit. Nearly all of them will have some sort of coaching available if you've never fished before. They'll all have tackle for hire, and it will cost you probably under £100.
Don't forget your EA fishing license.
Yep, you can buy a single day fishing license.
Single day online. I don't know how much they are now, Georgia. It used to be at 7 or 8 quid. It's not a lot, is it?
Yeah, it's hardly anything. And if everything goes according to plan, you probably go home with a couple of trout for your tea as well.
Absolutely.
And also the beginnings of a terrible, terrible addiction.
I tend to go home with the trout largely unmolested, and the trees behind me looking like it's Christmas with all the twinkly bits of fly hanging out of them.
What very good suggestions. Well done, guys. Thank you very much. So all that remains before we go is for me to say that there's a final reminder that you can get your hands on a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters by sending in your shooting dilemmas or your unpopular opinions, sharing forgotten drives, good drive names, podcast suggestions. Just drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com, and if we read it out in the next episode or any future episodes, we will send you some garters. Don't forget your challenge avians.
Yes, I've been let off lightly, haven't I? I'm getting away with it.
You've got away with it this time. I can tell because you did all this extra research. But for now, that's your lot. Please keep sending in your follow-up thoughts to the podcast that Chris and I do. Chris and I will be back in a couple of weeks' time. But from all of us, for now, thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
I'm going to have another jam donut.
You tart.